Tim, first of all, thanks for joining me today in my less hot house in Seattle. It's been a warm few days, but we're starting to
Oof.
recover here a little bit. Oh, it's brutal, man.
Yeah, it sounds brilliant. You guys don't get that heat.
No, no, but today, dude, it's today. It's like, normally 85 would be a scorching hot summer day in Seattle, but it's going to be 85 today. And all of a sudden, after the last few days, it feels almost temperate. Like, oh, only 85. That sounds nice.
Right. Yeah, I got a cousin out there, so she's been sending me pictures of them trying to get into hotels and do everything they can
Yeah.
do to stay cool.
Yeah. There's people like just hanging out in Costco just for the AC.
I believe
Um,
it.
last time you and I spoke, I think was March of 2018 here in Seattle, and remarkably, nothing interesting has happened in the world in the last 3 years. So I don't even know what we're going to talk about.
Nothing of
It's
note,
been
right?
it's been so boring for the last three
Yeah.
years. Um, so I opened up my computer this morning, and the first headline I saw was 70% of millennials living paycheck to paycheck. And I thought, how appropriate, because you and I were going to have this conversation today. That speaks to some of what you're talking about on Nowhere Generation, doesn't it?
Yeah, we were touring around the world, and whenever we would interact with fans, they would have their different stories, their different experiences, with Rise Against and in their lives and whatever. But the one like real common motif that kept showing up in the conversations, whether it was like Berlin or Moscow or New York or Dallas or, Tokyo or Sydney, like was like young people feeling like they were slipping through the cracks, feeling invisible, and then feeling like they were on this constant moving treadmill and never reaching a finish line, doing what they were being asked of, but never quite reaping the benefits of it. And they were starting to lose faith in the institutions around them and lose faith in the way the world works and starting to wonder, does it still work the same way it did for the previous generations as it does for me?
Sure. Is that do you see this as a lack of opportunity? Is it struggling with the cost of living? Is it the price tag that comes with a good education in this country specifically? I mean, is it a combination of all of those things?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that play a role into why a young person's experience is different than somebody from a previous generation. But one of like I guess when you zoom out, you realize that like the world is being structured more and more to reward like short-term thinking instead of long-term thinking. If it doesn't create a profit, it's not something that we should care about. It's a shareholder like capitalism kind of way of thinking, and there are lots of things in life that we shouldn't relegate to simply whether it's profitable or not, like something like we should have been developing vaccines for the last 10, 20 years, in anticipation of something like this happening, but the reality is like it doesn't. There's no money in it for a company to develop a vaccine that might not happen or be needed for another 30 years, right?
Just sit on a shelf and expire, right?
Exactly. So like we have to like create or put pressure on like government to like have something like that in place, even though it's not say like a profitable business proposition, And so I guess that's just an example, but um there are so many things that are just kind of leaving young people behind. We keep using this image of this ladder on fire on this new record, and it's like the people at the top are now burning the ladder away, preventing anybody else from getting up there with them.
Some of this it could be attributed to American culture, though, too, right? We talk about the American dream, and if you work hard, you get opportunities. And in our society, people believe, some people, and it manifests itself in the way people vote, maybe the expectations of our peers, that if you're coming up short, that's some sort of personal failing, right? Like you must have done something wrong or made a mistake somewhere along the line, and that's on you, and there shouldn't be any help for you, right?
Yeah, totally. And that is such it's a way of thinking that sort of it's helpful to people to relieve the blame on society, to try to like take the blame off of the way our institutions are set up and just blame it on the person. And like the reality is like those blames are shared. Like when we talk about agency, which is like your own personal responsibility, like what you do in your life. And then we talk about structures, which is like the institutions around you. You know what I mean? Like where you grew up, what neighborhood you grew up, what school you went to, your gender, your sexuality, like everything, and how the world treats you. And you can't talk about agency without talking about structure. And you can't talk about structure without talking about agency either. You know what I mean? These are they all play a role in like your journey from point A to point B. But at some point, we're starting to wake up to is that these structures, like these institutions, they are biased. They favor some people and they disadvantage other people. And like any place in your life or my life that we've had an advantage, it means that someone else had a disadvantage, and like and vice versa. And so people are waking up to the fact that like the playing field is not totally level. And so they're starting to wonder, well, how do we get this way and how do we fix it?
Sure. When did you start writing this album, and how much of what was the year of 2020 crept into everything that's on No Word Generation?
So this album was, largely complete before the pandemic. Yeah. So like this wasn't one of those like we wrote it remotely during lockdown. Like we were writing this thing before all of this. We got off the road for Wolves in 2019. We did the Ghost Note Symphonies, which was like our acoustic record. We were touring still a little bit, but mostly focusing on new music. And we got into it in the winter of 2019, 2020, and, I was being kicked out of hotels while I was in the studio, like, because of lockdown. So that's kind of like where we were. Like we were right at the top of lockdown. We were still just putting some very finishing touches on the record. And so it's been in the can, since then. We were hoping to have this thing out last summer. What's interesting is though a lot of the themes are still relevant because we were like a lot of the things that we saw unfold over 2020, these were existing things. I mean, obviously like things like racism aren't new. They just really 2020 just really put it front and center. And so like we were singing about a lot of these ideologies in the same way that we sing about a lot of like almost dystopian stuff, like we sing about the world, what it might look like if you keep going down the road you're going down. And that's what we were singing about on this record. We didn't anticipate that all of those things would accelerate a lot faster, which I think is what happened, which is what we saw in 2020. And so it made the record like take on this like patina in a way and like made the songs, I don't know, like I heard them differently. And now I know people are hearing them now, maybe thinking that we wrote this thing like during the lockdown, but the reality is that we didn't, we wrote it before that.
Change your perspective on some of these songs then?
Yeah. It totally did. It was like, some of it was uncanny. You know what I mean? Like, where I was like,
like you knew.
Yeah. Like it was kind of weird. There was some lyrics where I'm like, I'm gonna have a hard time convincing anybody I wrote that thing before the pandemic. And then other parts were kind of like, oh yeah, like this is where we were going to end up. You know what I mean? If somebody put pressure on an already like failing system.
Yeah. Did you change anything after? I mean, the record was already done. As we got through last year, was there anything that you said, that this deserves another look, or I have something else for this that just kind of fit the experience at the time?
We really messed with like the artwork, I guess, is what we did, because that stuff we were able to. Like, the music was pretty much done, and then we spent a long time just like messing with like what it was going to look like, And I think as the year kind of unfolded, the TVs and the screens and the black and white and the stark image, it became like this imagery of like kind of what we were all being forced to resort to, you know what I mean? Which is kind of what you and I are doing right now, is like look at each other via a screen, like that's kind of like our world became this thing, like waiting and watching. All of our information, all of the meaningful parts of our life were coming from like a screen, and that's kind of like was something that I don't know, it hit a nerve.
You have family at home. Upside of the last year, getting able to being able to stay home and spend time with family. I mean, that must have been great.
Yeah, I got to be like a dad, to like my girls who are like 17 and 13. So it's like it was fun to like just kind of actually be able to tell them, yo, I'll be here next week and I'll be here the week after that, like
and maybe the week after that.
and possibly, yeah. And then they were like, oh, dad, when are you going?
Right. Did you get to do all of the fun family pandemic stuff, like help with homework and tutoring and all of that fun stuff?
Oh my God. I feel like I wasn't able to help with homework after like sixth grade. Like I was like no longer
Right.
good.
It just goes away, doesn't it? There's
Oh my
no
God.
coming
Like,
back to that stuff.
oh, I mean, like high school stuff might as well be like college to me. And then even like the 13-year-old was like in junior high, and I was like, I'm no help to you guys, So we did all the things. We went out with we started with like all the fun stuff that you do, like you have like a fancy dress up night, for no reason, and then we were
Right.
like baking stuff, and then we were doing like some outdoor hangs, and then we stopped doing all that. I think like everybody else did. So it was like, wait,
Sure.
is this still happening?
Well, the novelty wore off pretty quick.
Yeah,
Right?
it was like the first couple weeks. It was like, oh, this will probably never happen again. This will be a 10-day window of your life. We'll
Right.
talk about it like we talk about floods and droughts.
Dude, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. That was the theme here in Washington State. 2 weeks to just take 2 weeks and stay inside, and we're good to go. So we were like, well, we'll make the best out of these 2 weeks. Or we were saying, we'll make chicken salad out of chicken shit. This is going to be great. And here we just opened today, finally on June 30th.
Oh, yeah. Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
So, but now you're getting ready to go back on tour. Tour kicks off a month from today in New York. I mean, you got to be stoked to get back out on the road. How long has it been since you played a live show?
Jeez. Probably November of 20. Oh, wait. What am I going to say here? 2019. Yeah. November 2019. And even I say that we only played like maybe 10 shows all of 2019 because we were off the road. So we just did like a short Australia thing, and we opened for the Misfits in LA, and we played at Riot Fest in Chicago. And then we played a very small show in Fort Collins, Colorado, as a tribute to our studio, the Blasting Room, where we do all our records, their 25th anniversary. So when I say like that was our last show, like we hadn't really toured until late 2018 was the last time.
Wow.
The last time I was doing like consecutive shows, like on a bus, for weeks on end.
Proper.
Yeah, proper, right? Not just little one else where you fly out and it's like, you fly home the next day. Proper touring was the end of 2018. So it's been a long time.
Do you think it's going to be emotional when you go back that first time, or weird the first couple of times? I mean, it's been so long, and I think there's probably a lot built up for this trip back out on the road, given all that's happened.
I can't even anticipate what playing live is going to be like, to be honest. I know it's going to be emotional on several levels. One, getting back with like the band and my crew, like we're family. So that's going to be such a crazy thing to be back in the dressing rooms and back on the bus and, back hanging out on the day off, that kind of stuff. That's like, I realized like when I didn't have it, it was like, whoa, that's a huge part of my life, is just I connect with people, and we're all over North America. Actually a bunch of our crew comes from the Pacific Northwest, so they're in the heat right now. And so I don't see everybody. They're not down my street. You know what I mean? But like we travel so much, I see them very regularly, so it feels like they're down my street. And all of a sudden when the airport shuts down and the shows stop and everything, it's like, oh wait, I haven't seen you guys in like a year now. Like I'm able to catch up like with you, or like what's going on with your families and whatever. So that will be emotional. And then the live show, I can't even imagine. Like I played for like 50 kids acoustic in a record store 3 weeks ago now, the day our album came out. And even that was overwhelming. Just to have 50 people and me and an acoustic guitar. It was like, whoa, real people in real life.
Wild, huh?
Yeah, this is nuts. Now exponentially it'll be even crazier. So
are you guys encouraging fans to get vaccinated?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're all vaccinated, and everybody in our crew, all the bands we're on tour with, And then, yeah, we're definitely encouraging our fans to just, follow the science, get vaccinated. Let's find a way out of this thing. And right now, that's your best way out of this thing. And the um the benefits far outweigh the cost.
And it's really coming down to young people, isn't it? People between like 21 and 35 years old. I mean, that's where we're really lacking in the vaccination department, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nationally.
And I'll tell you, like, so my days, so like in the last few weeks have been a lot of this. I just turn this computer on and I talk to someone like you. And I talk to people overseas. I talk to a lot of like journalists overseas, and I'm telling you, man, they are so incredibly jealous of the progress in America. Where I think like America's spread, we were kind of behind, a year ago, and the rest of the country was doing a better job at locking down. And I'm talking to journalists who they don't have access to the vaccine. The people around them don't. They're still in lockdowns. Places like Australia just went into their fourth lockdown. They don't have the mass vaccination option there, and so their sporting events aren't back, their music events aren't back. It's not coming back. And we're a band that like we tour places like Germany all the time, and we were straight up told like you won't be touring Germany in 2021. It's not going to happen.
Is it remarkable to some of these people you talk to that we have access to vaccines here and people just aren't getting it? Does it just blow them away?
Yes, because they're just they're chomping at the bit. You know what I mean? The fact that like you and I can just walk down the street and get it today, right?
Right.
It wouldn't be a problem. And they're just waiting patiently, and they're still being, staying inside. They're still scared for their loved ones, and then they want events to come back. You know what I mean? I sit here and talk about like this tour that we're going to do, but it's not coming to the UK. You know what I mean? Like it's not going. It can't. It's not going to Australia. It's not going to Europe. It can't. We would be. You know what I mean? Like we'll be at your front door the second it opens. But like, we can't do it. We're not going to do it this year, and we'll probably not be in Europe until next summer, which is crazy because
yeah,
to put a record out June 4th of 2021 and then not be in like Europe until a year later. That's never happened with our band, So it's still, we're not quite out of this thing,
A long way to go.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Maybe next time we'll get to do it face to face again.
Yes.
Like back in the good old days of 2018.
The world before.
Yeah, right. Well, cool. Thanks a lot. And I hope to see you soon, really, man. I appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. I hope it cools down out there.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
All right, cool. All right, take care.